What are the worst NFL free agent signings of the last decade? Which NFL free agents netted giant bags of cash, were supposed to change the trajectory of a team, or at the very least put them over the top as a contender, but ultimately backfired, blowing up in their faces like a firework from the JPP stand? The good news for Browns, Jets, and Broncos fans is that Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson were all trades, not free agent acquisitions. Today, I, Brandon Perna, knower of football stuff, is going to go through the top bad signings of basically the last decade. We have a guy who tried to sue the team that overpaid him, some massive whiffs at quarterback, and a man who was released and suspended while two different teams took a chance on him. Whew, that's good sports. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. We are less than 1,000 subs away from hitting 710,000 subscribers. Your support here means everything to me. I'm a sad, lonely man without you. All right, there's some runner-ups that ultimately weren't bad enough to make my super official final list. The Ravens got one season out of Earl Thomas after he gave the Seahawks the bird on his way out. The Ravens gave Earl Thomas a 4-year, $55 million deal, and he played well in 2019. Off the field, though, Earl was held at gunpoint by his wife when she found him in a three-way with another woman and his brother. Yes, that was real, and the Ravens were able to void his contract and cut him after he punched teammate Chuck Clark at practice. Odell Beckham Jr. got a hefty $15 million for 1 year in Baltimore and actually had his best statistical season since 2019. Then Miami handed him another $3 million to catch 9 passes this last year. Somehow, though, that's still Baker Mayfield's fault. The Packers overpaid tight end Jimmy Graham for 2 years of service after paying Martellus Bennett $21 million to play only in 7 games. Sam Bradford got $15 million guaranteed from the Cardinals in 2018. Not only did he go 0-3, he is the only quarterback in NFL history to ever lose his starting job to Josh Rosen. Which takes us to number 14, Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler's coming off a terrific 10.5 sack season for the Washington Commanders. He also had a pick 6. One of the themes for the 2024 season, though, was the absence of a pass rush for the Falcons, right? Let's go back to the year 2020. Words that have never been uttered until now. The Atlanta Falcons handed Fowler a 3-year, $45 million deal to build off of his 11.5 sack season he had just had with the Rams. Now, Fowler netted just 7.5 sacks through 2 seasons with the Falcons, where he was ultimately released. Now, I wouldn't have mentioned Dante Fowler in this episode if he wasn't coming off such a nice season for the Commanders. When a player you let go ultimately thrives in another system, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror, which will probably shatter because you're so damn ugly. Number 13, I've got Nick Foles, who was so good in the Super Bowl, I sometimes forget that the Jacksonville Jaguars signed him to a 4-year, $88 million contract. Foles injured his big dick week 2, and that's when the world was introduced to Minshew mania. One of the most magical quarterback seasons in my mind.
I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
You and me both, brother.
Now, Foles lost the starting role to Minshew while he was injured, and Jacksonville traded Nick Foles to the Bears in 2020 for a 4th-round pick. While the Jaguars paid him $30 million for 3 touchdowns and 736 passing yards, which is $40,700 for every yard, I commend them for actually moving on from Foles so quickly. Otherwise, he'd be higher on this list. If we're counting coaches, Urban Meyer might also be the worst free agent signing since Albert Haynesworth. Number 12 on my list of bad free agent signings, and this one is recency bias, but the Raiders signed Christian Wilkins to a $110 million contract. Only for him to get injured after just 5 games. Now, Wilkins can come back strong in 2025 and resume his game-wrecking ways on the defensive interior, and I expect he will. I'm sure he's already thinking about how he can cop a feel on Bo Nix the way he used to do to old Josh Allen.
There are some things that I didn't appreciate down there that was going on, and we'll let everybody make their own judgments for that.
Wilkins did something.
There's stuff that happens in those piles that we don't want to know.
Do alpha males grab each other's groins on the football field?
But for instant returns, this was a bad break for the Raiders, who made a big move to add to a defense that played very well down the stretch in 2023. Number 11, my man Von Miller was playing well in Buffalo until he got hurt in 2022. My man Von Miller was playing well in Buffalo before he got suspended in 2024. My man Von Miller hasn't been able to deliver on his 6-year, $120 million deal the Bills gave him in 2022. In terms of total value, that was actually the biggest contract handed out in free agency in 2022. Now, yes, a lot of that contract is funny money on the back end, but Vaughn had the second biggest cap hit for the Bills in 2024, and pending a restructure carries the second biggest cap hit in 2025. Vaughn did have 40 pressures despite missing 4 games, but based on the timing of his injury in 2022, which he wasn't ready to return from in 2023, not a single part of this deal worked out for the Bills. Well, except for that sick-ass near scoop and score against the Ravens in the playoffs. If Vaughn is willing to take a pay cut, he's worth keeping as a rotational edge rusher or pass rush specialist, but that's an if at this point. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog, and my code THATSGOOD. We are 62 signups away from 5,500. Here's the new deal. Since the Chiefs didn't three-peat and I wasn't forced to go to the parade, I asked you guys in my last video, the AFC video, what punishment I should do for the Eagles winning. Well, here's the deal. I will purchase a Cooper DeJean jersey. I will fly to Philadelphia, and in the Cooper DeJean jersey, since he's my hero, I will recreate the Rocky montage from the movie Rocky, and then we will post it here on YouTube. But we got to hit 7,500 signups. I'll give you guys until the draft to hit that. And if we hit that, I'll do a 100-mile bike ride in a full-on Mummers costume. So just use my code THATSGOOD at Underdog. If you've signed up with my code and haven't made your first play yet, you gotta do that. It's the best app for daily fantasy and pick'em games. And I've already lost my first set of basketball picks, so off to a great start. Oh, where'd this mustache come from? Maybe go check out Grossi's channel. I shaved my beard live for his charity stream, so that's why this appeared out of nowhere. Number 10, Byron Maxwell. The Eagles just won the Super Bowl. They've won 2 Super Bowls and been to 3 in the last 10 years, but before that, they were floundering. In Chip Kelly's final season as the Eagles head coach, he signed Seahawks corner Byron Maxwell and Cowboys running back DeMarco Murray in the span of 24 hours. Maxwell got an insane, for the time, 5-year deal worth over $53 million. He was playing corner next to Richard Sherman, with Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor back there as well in Seattle, which made him look better than he really was. Maxwell went from allowing a passer rating of 57.8 to 78.5 to a very QB-friendly 100.7 in his first season with the Eagles. The Eagles were ready to move on from Maxwell after just 1 season into his 5-year contract. Remember when Jason Kelce said this about Howie Roseman?
Howie Roseman, a few years ago, was relinquished of all control pretty much in this organization. He was put in the side of the building where I didn't see him for over a year.
Jason's referring to this time period for the Eagles. After firing Chip Kelly following the 2015 season, the Eagles traded Maxwell and linebacker Kiko Alonso, who, if you recall, Chip Kelly acquired via a trade when Kelly sent LaShawn McCoy to the Bills. Philly was able to get the 8th overall pick from the Dolphins for those 2 players to get enough ammo to move up and draft quarterback Carson Wentz, who of course has helped the Eagles win 2 Super Bowls when he is on the bench in the big game watching his backup start. 2015 was a pivotal year for Philly. Chip Kelly was given GM duties. Howie Roseman took that back seat, and Philly watched in horror as Chip Kelly tanked the team. DeMarco Murray, by the way, had arguably his worst season with the Eagles and was traded to the Titans the following year. Number 9, a recent one, Gabe Davis. With the arrival of Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, there's a chance the 3-year, $39 million contract given to Gabe Davis still works out. Gabe is just 25 years old, which is a big reason the Jags went after Gabe versus re-signing Calvin Ridley, who is 30 years old. The Jags also were smart enough to not give Ridley a 4-year, $92 million deal with $50 million guaranteed like the Titans did. Jacksonville, though, already had $72 million wrapped up in receiver Christian Kirk, who is good when healthy. The Brian Thomas draft pick was perfect. He is a true number one receiver and could be a perennial top 5 player at the position. Brian Thomas, though, playing so well, makes the Gabe Davis signing look worse right now. Obviously, Trent Baalke lost his job, and I think it's moves like this being the reason why. Gabe Davis tied Darnell Mooney as the second highest paid receiver in free agency in 2024. And just last offseason, not a single receiver signed outside of Calvin Ridley was a true number one wideout. If you know you're going to target a receiver in the draft, you need to make a value signing at that position, which the Jags did not do with Gabe Davis. They overpaid, and he produced just 2 TDs and 239 yards, including a negative 2-yard performance against the Texans. And then he tore his meniscus. And when Christian Kirk went down, Davis's production didn't go up. I love Gabe, but even I know he is a role player at the position. Also, if a guy is playing for a quarterback as good as Josh Allen, you have to assume he's going to produce less with your quarterback. Now, they could have had Nick Westbrook-Ikhine for like $2 million on a 1-year deal and used that Gabe Davis money to sign a better corner than Ron Darby. Number 8, Jimmy G and Gardner Minshew. Now, I'm lumping these two quarterbacks together because it was like the Raiders wanted to make the same mistake twice. You guys know I love Gardner Minshew, and I want to be Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh God, do I. Which makes this really hurt. The Raiders gave Garoppolo, though, a 3-year, $72.75 million deal in 2023 with $33.75 million guaranteed. They released him a year later after he lost his starting job to 4th-round quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Garoppolo is a better NFL quarterback than Gardner Minshew, but Minshew somehow beat out Aiden O'Connell in their QB competition. Minshew inked a 2-year, $25 million deal with $15 guaranteed the next offseason. Minshew's deal was overall more team-friendly, but Vegas guaranteed $50 million to 2 quarterbacks in 2023 and 2024 and netted a combined 12 wins in those 2 seasons, with Aiden O'Connell accounting for a chunk of them, which was oddly just enough to put the Raiders out of reach for a quarterback in the 2024 draft and possibly the 2025 draft. The entire time, you could have just kept Derek Carr. Raiders, Garoppolo's 65.1 completion percentage and 77.7 passer rating, career low for a season in which he played at least 6 games. His 5.3 interception percentage, also a career high. The Garoppolo signing was also strange because Jimmy G was coming off an ankle surgery. The Raiders released Derek Carr just to sign an injured Jimmy G. He literally had to pass a physical before his deal was finalized for the Raiders, and on his way out, the NFL suspended him for 2 games for taking medication without a proper prescription, which actually saved the Raiders' asses. That suspension voided $11.25 million of Jimmy's base salary in 2024, making his release easier. Although, just keeping him on the roster and not overpaying for another backup quarterback would have been the easiest thing to do, right? Which takes us to number 7 and Derek Carr. Now, the Raiders were too dumb to keep Derek Carr, but when the Saints gave Carr a 4-year, $150 million deal, I was happy for the dude. I like Derek Carr, and the Saints had a solid roster and a head coach in Dennis Allen who Carr already knew. Derek, with nice stats, led the Saints to a winning record in 2023 and just missed the playoffs despite defeating the division winner Buccaneers on December 23rd. Hell, the Saints were the hottest team in the NFL in 2024 after 2 weeks. Carr was dealing, and then in an instant, it looked like he was someone who should be dealing cars.
Cruising around with a great rate.
A Week 3 15-12 loss to the Eagles actually looks pretty good in hindsight, but Carr fell to the Falcons, then he suffered an oblique injury in the Chiefs game, and by the time he returned, the Saints season had already spiraled out of control. Now, technically, this is an out year in Derek Carr's contract, and even though he is by far the best QB on the Saints roster, the fact that they are considering eating $50 million in dead money by releasing him says all you need to know about this move not being right for the Saints. Big picture.
Refinance at a great rate.
This isn't really even a knock on Derek Carr. He's an incredibly serviceable quarterback. Maybe the most serviceable QB there is. Carr, though, is essentially the albatross of the Saints mismanaging their cap situation post Drew Brees and Sean Payton. Carr is too good for the Saints to tank and not good enough to make them a contender. That's why he'd be a great Steeler, right? If the Saints keep him around in 2025, I do not believe they are a serious team. Number 6, I've got Kenny Golladay. If the Giants do trade for Matthew Stafford, this becomes really funny. With Matthew Stafford in Detroit, Kenny Golladay had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons in 2018 and 19, plus 11 touchdowns in 2019 to go with all of those yards. Now, an injury slowed him down in 2020, as he only played in 5 games, but that did not stop the Giants from giving Golladay a 4-year, $72 million deal in 2021. That's how long the Giants have been chasing a playmaker at the receiver position.
They had some leverage because the Bengals were heavily involved here. Chicago Bears made a late push, and the Giants wanted to get this done.
They wound up paying Golladay $45 million, including $4.5 million in 2023 to not play for them, which was almost the exact same amount of money the Lions paid Golladay for the first 4 years of his career total. I get why the Giants went after Kenny, though. He was amazing for 2 seasons, and injuries are what really derailed his career. But with 43 receptions and just 1 garbage time touchdown as a Giant, he was essentially paid $1 million for every catch he made. That said, this was an excellent prequel to the Daniel Jones contract. Number 5, the Patriots sign Antonio Brown. The Raiders traded for AB, so technically they get a pass in this situation. This bizarre set of events, though, begins with the Raiders sending a 3rd and 5th round pick to the Steelers for the disgruntled receiver's services. Brown kicked off his tenure with the Raiders by signing a 3-year, $50 million extension and then getting fined for missing mandatory minicamp because of a helmet dispute, burning off his feet in a cryo chamber, and earning a release by the team after calling then GM Mike Mayock a bitch-ass cracker. And this was well before the Cracker of the Year award became a coveted achievement by those most desperate for internet attention. The Raiders were able to cover their asses and void his contract due to conduct detrimental to the team. The Raiders only paid Antonio Brown $860,000 before giving him his full release. A team very familiar with full release, the Patriots signed Antonio Brown to a 1-year, $10.5 million deal on September 7th, 2019. History forgets that Tom Brady courted Antonio Brown twice. But he did, and he cost the Pats $5 million in doing so. Brown made that $5 million by playing in 1 game for the New England Patriots, catching 4 balls for 56 yards and a TD. That's a $5 million touchdown right there. Brown looked good in that game, but he was then suspended by the NFL the following week for 8 games, and the Patriots released him. In terms of money, it's honestly nothing to the Patriots, but with all the bullshit surrounding AB at the time, it was such a dumb move by a team that didn't need to be that desperate to win. Number 4, Jawan James. While John Elway was running the Broncos, Denver was a revolving door at right tackle. It was a huge problem. The free agency issue, though, started when the Broncos signed tackle Menelik Watson to a 3-year, $18 million deal. Who? Exactly. A big contract to an unproven player. That was a massive whiff. And to try and overcompensate, Elway then made Dolphins tackle Jawan James the highest paid right tackle in the league.
Difficult to find average to slightly above average offensive linemen in today's NFL, and that's why the Denver Broncos had to pay a premium for him.
The highest paid right tackle in the entire National Football League. His new deal worth a reported $52 million, including $32 million in guaranteed money.
A lot of money to protect quarterback Joe Flacco. It wasn't just that James was bad. We actually don't really know. He immediately got hurt. He started 3 games before going on IR. Then he opted out for the 2020 COVID season. Then he tore his Achilles training away from the team facility and didn't play in 2021. Because the injury occurred away from the team facility, Denver was able to void his $10 million base salary and cut him. James then filed a grievance against the Broncos, seeking $15 million and eventually settled for $1.09. James made over $18 million from the Broncos for 63 snaps. Number 3, Le'Veon Bell. One of my favorite running backs to watch in the 2010s was the Steelers' Le'Veon Bell. He was quite possibly the most patient runner in NFL history. He was an artist with the ball in his hands. Bell had 3 1,200-plus yard seasons in 4 years with the Steelers. Then he got too patient, held out for all of 2018 in a contract dispute. In 2019, the New York Jets handed the disgruntled running back a 4-year, $52.5 million deal. He didn't get along with head coach Adam Gase, who didn't even want Bell on his team to begin with. Ultimately, the Jets paid Bell $28 million for 17 starts, 863 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and he was cut after 2 games in 2020. The $28 million Bell made is more than the $26 million guaranteed in Saquon Barkley's 3-year deal with the Eagles. And Bell is a big reason the free agent running back market has tanked so profusely.
Le'Veon Bell, one of my closest friends still, he came with me on the Trump campaign.
Number 2, Kirk Cousins. Now, we all roasted the Atlanta Falcons during the 2024 offseason, and we all did it for the wrong fucking reason. Sure, Kirk Cousins was coming off a devastating Achilles injury. Yes, none of us knew for certain that he would be able to bounce back and start the 2024 season, but we all pretty much applauded the Falcons for giving Big Kirko a $100 million guaranteed contract. 180 total, but $100 million guaranteed over 4 years. Kirk was playing very well before he got injured in Minnesota, and the Vikings offense took a big step back without him on the field. When the Falcons drafted quarterback Michael Penix at pick 8, we laughed in their dumb bird faces. Not as a slight to Penix, who we all love, but to the team drafting a quarterback the same offseason they paid another one $100 million. It wasn't just that, the Falcons drafted a quarterback who did not need time to develop. This was the second oldest QB in the class, who started the second most games in college. Well, it turns out Kirk Cousins played like a shell of his former self, and he was eventually benched for the rookie late in the season, and now the Falcons are praying to the football gods some team, any team, will be desperate enough to trade for Cousins and take on part of his salary. It's a $65 million dead cap hit if they release him this offseason. $15 more million than the Saints if they cut Derek Carr. And number 1, the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders in 2022. The Los Angeles Chargers gave Patriots corner J.C. Jackson a 5-year, $82.5 million deal in the 2022 NFL offseason. J.C. Jackson was my initial slot here, but to be fair to the Chargers, the 2022 offseason was an arms race in the AFC West, one that all 3 teams fucking lost. The Broncos traded for Russell Wilson and then signed Cowboys edge rusher Randy Gregory. The Raiders gave Davante Adams a 5-year contract worth $28.5 million per season, while also handing Chandler Jones a 3-year, $51 million deal. The Chargers also signed Khalil Mack that free agency period, which was clearly the best move of them all. But holy shit, those were 3 desperate teams, each going all in to compete with the Chiefs, who were and still are running the damn division. Davante Adams was a great pairing with Derek Carr. We kind of forget Adams had 14 touchdowns in 2022 and 1,500 receiving yards, essentially tying his best season with Rodgers, but he was traded to the Jets in 2024. Chandler Jones had just 4.5 sacks in 2022 and didn't play at all after that because it was clear he was dealing with some very serious mental health issues.
Belichick, you didn't deflate Gate. He's innocent.
Randy Gregory started 6 total games for the Broncos, recording 3 sacks before Denver traded him to the 49ers for a 7th-round pick. The Broncos outbid the Cowboys for Randy Gregory, who was slated to return to Dallas. Remember that? The Broncos also outbid the Cowboys for Paxton Lynch. What's the lesson? Well, if Jerry Jones really wants a player, let him have him. Just let him have him.
Smiles and glory holes.
Denver paid Gregory $26 million for 3 sacks. That's $8.6 million per sack. That's a bad investment. Which takes us back to J.C. Jackson, who collected $44 million from the Chargers. He played in 5 games in 2022, was struggling mightily on the field, and then he tore his patella tendon, ending his season. After 2 games in 2023, the Chargers benched him and traded him back to the Patriots, getting a 2025 6th-round pick. That's $38 million for a 6th-round draft pick. And they get that pick in 2025, this next draft. Now, Jackson earned that massive contract coming into the league as an undrafted free agent in 2018.
Mr. Interception has 25 in the past 4 years, most in the league.
He played 2 great seasons under Belichick in 2020 and 2021, but New England released him following the 2023 season after they traded back for him. All of those moves, and the Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls and finished in first place in the AFC West every year in the process. None of that shit worked. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. You gotta subscribe. Please. Did you know subscribing's free? Did you know YouTube has control of all my assets? And if I don't get 1 million subscribers, they take it all away from me?